Being 7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bosphus,
Here.
Commissioner Baker,
Here.
Commissioner Collins,
Here.
Commissioner Gary,
Here.
Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Talentino,
Here.
Commissioner Torti.
Here.
Okay, we're all here. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would ask those with cell phones, if you would please put them on vibrate or turn them off. We would appreciate it. We have, on item number B, we have a proclamation to the City of Sault Ste. Marie Proclamation, Declaration of Sault Ste. Marie's LGBTQ Pride Month. And if I understand, Adam Gurnall, on behalf of the Sioux Pride community, will accept this. Adam? If you'd like to meet me at the podium. See? Thank you. We have a city proclamation, City of Sault Ste. Marie Proclamation, Declaration of the Sault Ste. Marie's LGBTQ plus Pride Month. Whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie is a welcoming community, an exceptional place to live, work, play, learn, build a business, and raise a family. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie recognizes the importance of equality and freedom. And whereas our nation was founded and is guided by a set of principles which include that every person has been created equal, has rights to their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that each shall be accorded the full recognition and protection of the law. And whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie's LGBTQ plus community are a vital part of all fields and professionals and contribute to making our community a stronger one. And whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie is dedicated to fostering acceptance of all of its residents and preventing discrimination, harassment, and bullying based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. And whereas Sault Ste. Marie is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant nature of our city. And whereas it is imperative that young people in our community, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers and community leaders. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Anthony G. Bosphus, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, hereby proclaim and recognize June 2019 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and urge residents to recognize the contributions made by members of this community and to actively promote the principles of equality, liberty, and justice. In witness thereof, I hereby set my hand, cause the seal of the City of Sault Ste. Marie to be affixed this 17th day of June 2019. Anthony G. Bosphus, Mayor. Adam? Thank you. Item C is public comment. At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an agenda item, if you'd like to identify yourself at this time, when the item comes up, you will be recognized to speak on it. We have a couple. Could you just give us your names and the item? G2.
Dennis Nixon, Manager Report, G2.
Okay. G2, okay. Who's getting theirs? Are you getting their names? Erica, you're getting their names?
I missed that one.
Do you have the other one too? Okay. Yes, Jim?
Jim McLeod, same item.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Stephanie Durno, F3,
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Item D is the consent agenda.
Item 1 under consent agenda, approval of City Commission meeting minutes of June 3rd, 2019. Item 2, acceptance of the Airport Advisory Board meeting minutes of May 9th, 2019. Item 3, acceptance of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority meeting minutes of May 14th, 2019. Item 4, acceptance of the Economic Development Corporation meeting minutes of May 14th, 2019. Item 5, acceptance of the Seal and Osborne Trust Board meeting minutes of January 15th, 2019. Item 6, acceptance of the Tax Increment Authority Unit 3 meeting minutes of May 14th, 2019. Item 7, appointment of Daryl Harp to the Police and Firefighters Pension Board. Item 8, authorization of the purchase, installation, and budget amendment to update operating system on city servers. Item 9, approval of a MERS Healthcare Savings Program Participation Revised Agreement for the Clerical Unit. Item 10, approval of the private use agreement with the Sioux Tribe for the use of East 10th Avenue unimproved right-of-way. Item 11, from the Economic Development Corporation, approval of a budget revision for Sanderson Field Fuel Farm Safety and Quality Updates. Item 12, from the Economic Development Corporation, approval to close out McKinley Manor Brownfield Plan. And item 13, approval of consent agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Is there a commissioner who'd like something further explained on the consent agenda? Commissioner Twardy?
I just have a quick question, just for a little clarification on item number 10. I'm just wondering if the right-of-way use has anything to do with the development of East 10th.
Acting City Manager.
Not this portion of East 10th, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Collins?
I had received some communication from citizens, and the question that was posed is, are we giving the tribe any special treatment that an individual wouldn't get in reference to permitting and so forth? I already know the answer, but I want it stated on the record, so if somebody would.
Acting City Manager?
This afternoon, we had several conversations with the tribe, and the tribe has submitted a letter that is circulated on the dais for the City Commission. The tribe is requesting the private use agreement to assist in its development of public access to expand the Bullwotting School parking lots. To alleviate any concerns individuals may have, the tribe wishes to ensure that the city has all the necessary permits from the Corps of Engineers and will assume responsibility regarding any additional required permits, expenses necessary to ensure compliance, as well as the safety of the children, parents, staff, and community, both tribal and local. And to follow up that, we did receive an email this afternoon about 3 o'clock from it's the state DEQ. Based on the internal discussions and our conversations last week regarding the proposed work on the school driveway to access the parking lot under construction, I do not believe anything has changed from our original determination, and the DEQ, which is EGLE, is the acronym now, will not be taking jurisdiction on the project that was permitted by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. So the DEQ has cleared and is leaving the jurisdiction under the Army Corps of Engineers, which the permitting has been obtained.
And they're not being treated any differently than anyone else.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Twardy?
I so move that we approve the consent agenda.
Support.
It's been moved, supported. Are there any questions? Roll call, please. Well, it's okay.
Mayor Bosbis,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Collins,
Yes.
Commissioner Gary,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino,
Yes.
Commissioner Twardy.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Item 1, under special orders of business, public hearing on a resolution to vacate the full width of the alley between lots 1 through 5 inclusive and lot 6, block 2, Spruce Place, without the retention of utility easements. A, public hearing. B, action on the item.
Okay, thank you. Acting City Manager.
On this matter, I'll defer to Community Development Director Kelly Freeman.
Okay. Evening, Kelly.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. So this property is located at 604 Johnston Street. It's at the intersection there with Cary. There's a single-family house and a detached garage located on its west side. The lot layout, in this particular circumstance, there's actually an undeveloped alley that sits between the house and the garage. And the applicant would like to replace the garage. However, the zoning ordinance requires that accessory structures be located on the same property that they are to serve. And because that alley is there, they're not able to construct anything on that lot where the garage is currently. So they've put in a request to vacate the alley without the retention of utility easements to allow those two pieces to be contiguous with one another. No utility issues. DTE did request the retention of utility easements. However, most larger companies like that, they'll just do that as a matter of policy, not because they actually need it. They did indicate that they don't have any plans to do anything there, but they'd like the utility easement retained anyway. I think I included a photograph in the packet that shows the house sitting over about half of the alley. So it exists on paper only. I did get one comment from a neighbor who just had a question about it. They actually were not local. So once I explained to them what was going on, they didn't have an issue with it. The Planning Commission heard this item on May 23rd and voted 9-0 to recommend that it be vacated without the retention of utility easements. The applicant's here tonight. If there's any questions of her that I can't answer, otherwise I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Acting City Manager?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, at this time, we'll hold a public hearing on a resolution to vacate the full width of the alley between lots 1 through 5 inclusive and lot 6, block 2, Spruce Place, without the retention of utility easements. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to make a comment at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the included resolution to vacate the full width of the alley between lots 1 through 5, inclusive to lot 6, block 2, Spruce Place, without the retention of utility easements.
Support.
It's been moved, supported. Are there any questions? Commissioner Tuarte.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Summers for her desire to improve her property and therefore improve our community. So thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Commissioner Collins?
Yes.
Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino?
Yes.
Commissioner Tuarte?
Yes.
Mayor Bosbis?
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you.
Item 1, under Communications, from UPTA, request for transfer of ownership of 4001 I-75 Business Spur, UPTA-Dial-A-Ride Main Office and Maintenance Facility.
Okay, thank you. Acting City Manager.
On this matter, Eastern Upper Peninsula Transportation Authority Executive Director Pete Karamsky is going to present to the commission on the request for the transfer of property and ownership.
Okay. Evening, Peter.
They have a PowerPoint presentation, but it's
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's not going to
not
work.
gonna work.
The city manager informs me that the PowerPoint presentation probably is not going to work.
Correct. We're not getting feed from the laptop to the, but you can view it on yours.
That's fine. I basically just had a bunch of pictures. There wasn't a lot of text there anyways. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Pete Pramsky, Director at UPTA. This is our Finance Director, Kami Gordon. Pretty much, they did a wonderful job with your write-up for your packets. About everything I was gonna come and tell you tonight is in that packet you had for review. And there was a letter of support in there from MDOT for this cause as well. Basically, it comes down to the building that we occupy right now is owned by the city, and it's in very poor condition. I've been at UPenn almost 3 years. And when I first got there, they were looking at doing a renovation type project there. After looking around the place, it's, the infrastructure there is very old clay tile sewer that's failing, that we've had plugged twice. It's plugged right now, matter of fact. The HVAC system got red tagged, the boiler got red tagged by the state boiler inspector earlier this spring. The roof leaks horribly in about 3 different places. We have ceiling tiles falling out of the ceiling in our conference room. In the back of our ferry shop, we got a machine shop back there. We have some very expensive spare engines for our ferry boats. Water started leaking on our transmissions and engine room there for our ferry boats where we store them. They're brand new engines, never been used before. And it's in very poor condition. So to put a bunch of money into it for renovation just didn't make a lot of sense. UPTA had been putting in for funding for a new facility or renovation for years before I got there. I've continued to put in for funding for a new facility, and it appears now working with MDOT, we're very close to having that funding. Matter of fact, we have kind of a verbal agreement, commitment from them that we do have the funding, a very significant amount of funding for a new transportation facility. The problem with it is we don't own the building, the city owns the building, and we are not eligible for that funding for this new facility unless we're the owners. So that's why we're here tonight. I had this PowerPoint, I'm going to show you some pictures. There's some security issues there too that are very serious with our entryway for our busing system. The building wasn't built for a transit facility, and it's not set up very well. You walk in, busing customers walk in, and they're right in the middle of our lobby. If they got to use the bathroom, we don't really have a public bathroom, so we have a shared staff and public bathroom that people have to walk through our lobby, through our administrative office, into the back, through our lunchroom, past the refrigerator, and use the bathroom. Then we lose track of them. We don't know if they went back in the shop or if they're going to come back out to the front. It's just, it's not set up very well. Anyways, not to take up a lot of your time here. We're here making a request that you transfer over ownership. The background information is there right now. It's years ago when the FTA, for the federal government, first gave this building to the city to suit, that was supposed to be given to UPTA at that time. There were some problems at the time at UPTA where we could not take it, so it was given to the city, and UPTA was told to administer it. In the new scenario, if you signed the building over to UPTA, we could build a new facility there. It'd be the same situation. The city would still be able to run their dally ride system like they are now out of that building. Right now, we have a lease through you. In this case, maybe we would give you a lease to coexist there with us with a long-term commitment. Basically, you would end up with a brand new transportation facility at no cost to the city to use. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, in my mind, it doesn't really matter who owns it, as long as we can get the funding to build this new building. But in this particular case, the state funding that we'd receive to build this new facility, we'd also do a match with some ferry boat money that we get, because we also use this facility for a machine shop for our ferries and the storage for our ferries. So we would match that with some significant federal ferry boat money that we get. And if you got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them if I can.
Thank you, Pete. Just a couple of comments. First of all, I was here in a Community Action Employee Deputy Director when Community Action was the actual recipient that got the building. We dealt with the Honda Corporation, Japanese folks out of California. So it was misleading because it was never intended for UPTA. I mean, I remember when the city got, when Community Action got that, and Spencer Neighbor was the manager, we talked about including the city garage in that facility also, and it wasn't big enough for the city garage. So we, Frank Sasso, knowing Ron Galloway very well, talked about UPTA moving in because they were down on Drummond, or in Detour area. UPTA's main responsibilities are the ferries, and I have no problem with you building a building. I just look at the building that the city has, and again, we can't reap the profits because it was a state funded facility. We'd have to return the proceeds to the state. But to have a property that would be paying taxes in perpetuity, because it could be sold to a private enterprise, that's a designated corner that's very busy in our area. And I just can't see if there's a possibility that we could sell it eventually because UPTA moves and builds another building someplace. I think that benefits the city because then we would, in fact, be able to reap the benefits of tax. And there's no question that it needs some work. The community action, DART, garage type of thing. It's in disrepair and it needs, but the city certainly doesn't have the money to, and Dial-A-Ride certainly could operate in a smaller facility if UPTA had their own facility, or if you took Dial-A-Ride with you and let them lease from you kind of thing. So the money may be available to you. We don't know much information on the fact that those statements are fairly misleading to me because Community Action was the entity that actually got the building. We got with Joe Valenti, who was our MDOT manager at the time, came, and through the DART system, we were given the money for the property. In fact, the state thought we didn't pay enough money and wanted another $50,000 from the Japanese folks, and we had them designate that they would take that as a tax write-off, and they paid what they paid for it and didn't increase the amount. So ultimately, that's a valued property in the city of Sault Ste. Marie, and if we have a chance to bring it back to a private entity, I think we ought to stick to that, personally. Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, just kind of going off of your sentiments, I'm kind of feeling the same way, especially with the amount, with what we've got going on with some other sales within the city. I feel like not putting it out to bid at the very least would be very poor on our part. And then I don't know if there's another piece of city property that would be beneficial to you guys as well, because that is prime real estate for right on the I-75. And I agree with the mayor as far as being able to capture whatever tax revenue we possibly can, but to say that maybe there's another option somewhere else for them that we could refer back to administration to look into.
Commissioner Collins.
I actually agree with both Commissioner Baker and the mayor on their comments. My question is do you guys have to continue out of that facility, or can you get the money to build a facility on a different piece of property if we can find one that's more conducive?
We definitely can build anywhere we like, yeah.
Are you guys okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, location's everything. I mean, it would depend on where it was,
Location's not as important for you guys, though, from a retail perspective.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. You know, and whatever you decide is fine with me, because we will make other plans if that's, you know, the way you guys want to go with this. But if you look into the whole resale and putting that back on tax roll, it isn't quite that simple. We did look into this a little bit, and there is some requirements that FTA would have if you were to try to, you know, make that a profitable, you know, sale. You couldn't just decide to sell it. There's conditions there that you need to look into. It's
The city attorney would like to make a comment.
The building was purchased with grant funds through transportation monies, which are a combination of federal and administrated by the state or both. And we've done a lot of work in that area over the decades. And the process would be you would approach the agency and tell them what your plans were, and then the agency would tell you what their requirements are, and then you'd satisfy the requirements and carry out your plans. It isn't insurmountable.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Gary.
I guess just to ask City Attorney, so do you think the city would be able to sell it and would we be able to retain any of those proceeds, and then would it be available to be put on the tax rolls? And I have some concerns or questions about environmental impacts of that site. It was a car dealer and
I couldn't predict what the funding agency's requirements would be. So I don't know if you would be able to retain any of the sale proceeds. They may only require that the grant be paid back at a depreciated amount. It's unpredictable how they would handle it. We've run across these situations before where they've decided it's been enough years, we don't want anything back. Now, this particular case, I don't think that is going to be the situation, because I think the city manager researched that at some point in time and talked to some people from the funding sources. But from the standpoint of whether you get any of the money or not, is not what the mayor's talking about. The mayor's talking about the annual tax benefit that would derive from the property being taxable, and now it is not taxable.
Right, that was the second prong of my question. The other thing I would ask is the liability of the city if there are environmental concerns
Well,
now, and I don't know if you've done a phase 1 or phase 2 on that property.
Typically, in a development, the purchaser would exercise their due diligence, and they would analyze the property for their purposes, including what extra costs might be incurred due to disposal of contaminated soils. But in a purchase agreement, it wouldn't create liability for the city. It may reduce the purchase price that a purchaser is willing to pay, but it would not create liability for the city. Commercial reuse of contaminated property is relatively simple, because any soils that have to be removed from the site have to be landfilled. And any soils that can be put back on the site is okay, as long as provisions are made to eliminate contact with members of the public. And since that site is on public water and sewer, you don't have groundwater issues at play. It's right next door to a gas station. There's relative certainty that the gas station land has similar issues, and you can see that it's in commercial development without any difficulty.
Anyone else? Commissioner Talentino.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, this one was a tough one for me when I was thinking about this today. You know, as everybody knows, it's no secret, I want everything back on the tax roll. I don't want to give anything away. I think I've made that point pretty apparent in the last year and a half. But then again, I also don't want us as a city being stuck with a building, hoping that we're going to someday peddle it too. I guess that being said, I have a question for the acting city manager. Can you give us some options? I mean, lay out some options for us, just so we know, as a commission, what we could be looking at, please?
Yep, absolutely. So the staff recommendation that was before the commission was to waive the public bid requirement found in the city's land sale policy. And then based upon the inclusion of the development proposal to direct city administration to transfer the ownership, contingent upon a lease agreement being worked out between Dial-A-Ride and Community Action to be housed in the same transportation facility. If the commission is not comfortable taking that action, they could refer it back to city administration to do a little more research on if the building could be sold and developed privately and be put back on the tax rolls and what those requirements would be for that process. They could deny the request. They could refer it back to find another suitable location for the development of a transportation building. There's a variety of options that the commission could take to direct city administration to move forward with the project.
Commissioner Tory.
Thank you. Yeah, I think everybody in town knows that you guys do need a new facility, and you are a great partner to keep in town. It is prime real estate, so I think if it is possible that we can return it to the tax rolls and you're willing to build a brand-new building somewhere else in town, maybe not in such a prime location, that sounds like a better option, I think, in my mind. So I would be interested, I think, in having city administration research whether it can be returned to the tax rolls at all if we do sell it. What would be the requirements that we would have to comply with? And I was also kind of concerned if the city was given a gift, I'm not sure if we should be giving that gift away. So I had a concern about that, like just turning it over. So I would be in favor of sending it back. I think you,
Commissioner Miller.
I agree with Commissioner Tuardi, and maybe the building is not very good, but I think that's a prime piece of property that we should be very careful with.
So we need a motion or? Commissioner Baker.
I'll make a motion to refer it back to city administration to look into a possible, another piece of property that might fit UPTA's needs.
And dollar rights.
And dial rides, yes.
I'll support that.
Everybody understand the motion? Roll call. Roll call, please. Wasn't on, I guess. Commissioner Collins?
So, just so I'm clear, so city administration is gonna work with UPTA as well to see if there's other land that is possibly something that you guys would be interested in building someplace else?
Sure, or they could just go ahead and find some property too that if, on their own if they wanted to, but yeah, the city administration would help with that. And then see if, what the requirements are to release us from the building if we wanted to put it in private hands, right?
That wasn't part of the motion, but I was hoping that would be part of the motion.
Okay, I thought it was, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, Commissioner Collins,
Yes?
Commissioner Gary,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuardi,
yes.
Mayor Bosbis,
Yes,
Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
motion carried, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, under communications, update from Denny Doherty and the Voyager Island Trail Committee.
Okay. Evening, Dennis.
Good evening. Thank you. And thanks, Commissioners, for allowing us to...
Is your mic on?
What's that?
Is the mic
Hello?
on? Okay.
Thank you for addressing this, I guess, issue or request we have. We have 2 requests concerning Voyager Island. The first one is our committee's work to rebuild the Voyager dock on the west side channel. And the second request is to look at this new park like any other park in town, like Rotary Park or Sherman Park, and have a budget and different things that are associated with parks. So basically, I'm here for questions if you have, and hopefully we address this.
Put my mic on. The feedback, sometimes the feedback through the,
Oh.
because of the mics.
Sure.
People can't understand at home, I understand, but.
Okay.
So what you're asking, are the docks in this year so far?
Yes, the 3 docks have been installed. About 3 weeks ago, we got them in. The dock on Voyager Island, with all this high water, which you're probably aware of, and ice damage and everything, just made it difficult to keep repairing it. So we made a proposal to the city, our volunteer group, to move it to a more protected site around the corner. DEQ, Corps of Engineers, and the city all approved, so we did that. And after a couple weeks, completed the job, and now we have a new dock system on another part of the island.
Okay.
We pulled the original dock. There's no dock there anymore because we didn't want to deal with the ice issues and water issues and such.
You know, that dock's not left in the water, is it? Over?
Part of the dock is a floating dock. We pull out, in the fall.
Sure.
And the other part is permanent. It's in like 1.5 foot of water. Normally, it's in like 6 inches of water, but right now, we're pretty high in the water end of it. I think where we're at right now is a pretty secure spot. It's just out of the main corridor where ice flows through there, so I think we're going to be good.
Okay, Commissioner Baker?
So my understanding is you would like the city to take it over and put it into the Parks and Rec budget.
Well,
To a
okay,
certain-
the first issue is just accept our work that we just built the new dock, so we're not liable, so it goes to the
Sure.
city. The second issue is to consider this just like Sherman Park or Seal Park. Voyager Island is a park and it justifies maybe a budget, taking care of it, maybe having a little boat to go out to it occasionally. I know we have Bird's Eye Outfitters taking care of it, and ISD students go out and trim the grass and stuff, so.
So my question is to the city manager, because there's no recommendation, that your understanding of what Mr. Doherty was looking for?
No, I mean, I haven't had any conversations with Mr. Doherty. He's worked through the Parks and Rec Director and Assistant DPW Director, Dan Wires. My understanding is he was coming to present an update to the commission on Voyager Island and that the city would be accepting the work as we typically do periodically through the work.
So the second part wasn't really included with, okay.
Right.
Okay.
I, for one, think it should be included within the Parks and Rec Department. I think the volunteers of Voyager Island have kept this, who started it and kept this going and it's become a major attraction for our community. And I believe that it should be added on to give these volunteers a break. These guys have done a phenomenal job with creating the type of culture that we have now with kayaking, and so I applaud them for it, and I think it's time for us as the city to step up and take ownership.
Commissioner Collins.
So currently, how do the volunteers get to the island to do the maintenance work?
Some of us have kayaks and canoes. I have a little 12-foot boat, and that's how we get there. We haul all our lumber and, rafts and whatever we can get there. And it doesn't take much to get to the island. From Harvey Marina, it's probably a 3-minute, 3 hours. That'd be a little while. A 3-minute trip to get there. It's just around the corner and you're right there. And a 14-foot boat that you can buy in a new 5-horse motor is probably $3,500. Put it in the back of a pickup truck and away you go. So the city wouldn't have to leave it out. They could occasionally launch it down at Harvey and get out to the Voyager Island.
I was thinking more along the lines of maybe some sort of a transitional type of situation where we can give some funding that will help with the maintenance and so forth, but not actually city employees doing the work.
Yeah.
So maybe a way to where you can get some, instead of volunteers, get some paid volunteers to actually do the work. And the reason that I'm thinking that is that to go from a situation where we really don't have, although it's a beautiful place and a great idea, I just look at it from a administration side as far as how are we gonna get city people over there to actually do the work. So can we look at it more along the lines like we do with the ballparks, right? So we do the grass trimming, but there's a lot of volunteer work that goes in there, and we actually give funding to help out the infrastructure.
Thank you. Let's go to Commissioner Gary.
I think along the lines of Commissioner Collins, I'd like to have at a future meeting, maybe we discuss this and have a report from Dan Wires to see what the plan would be. We don't have a lot of data here to discuss, so, but, the work you're doing is fantastic, but I think we need more data-driven information so that we can make our decision and plan.
Commissioner Miller.
This was on the agenda tonight as just information. I don't see a recommendation from the city manager or from administration. Could we send it back to city administration and get a recommendation from them?
That certainly could be the case, and I have something to say when you're done also.
You can have the floor, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. I think, it's been a two-way street, and certainly you've taken the load with your group of people and have built that, and it's just tremendous how that's come off. And all of a sudden for the city to take over that responsibility in the near future, I think it works well with, I think Commissioner Collins was one that said, work together. You have the boats. We have some staff. I don't think we have any idea of what's going on over there. I'm not even sure if our folks have, other than maybe Mr. Wires has been there. And I would think we'd have to take a look at all of that and then plan on what that might be. And if we need to purchase a boat in the next, that's not one of our goals initially. But we certainly appreciate the information that you've been able to give us. And I would think sending it back to administration to work out the details is probably something that, and then you come back to us type of thing with some possibilities. But I know Commissioner Baker, you have your hand, and we're going to get to you in a second. So, but ultimately, I think it goes without saying that you folks have just done an excellent job over the years. Stuff breaks down, and and you're spending your own monies to bring it back together, and we really appreciate that. Now, going forward, I would think that some learning time is going to going to have to be needed for the staff. So ultimately, working together, I would think would be a good idea. Commissioner Baker.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to refer it back to administration for further review of helping out and finding some way to compromise. And I would also encourage the administration to look at other partners like the Community Foundation, who is big with Sioux Ultimate Paddle Day, who also might be a partner in something like that with those waterways down there, so.
Support.
Mr. Doherty?
Could I, one more
Sure.
comment? For the last 2 years, we've been working with Parks and Recs to transition this. We've been on the project 4 years, and some of our guys are saying, hey, it's time for the city.
Yeah.
And I understand, you need to talk about it and get your, recommendations. So in our end of it, it doesn't take much. Like I said, even a 12-foot boat you can buy for $300 and get you out to the island. So it's not a big deal, in my opinion, it seems, to get out to the island. Parks and Rec really have bird's eye outfitters that deal with them to keep the trails clean. ISD students have a long-term, it looks like a contract to cut the grass. So basically, the island is on automatic pilot. The spring and fall dock situation, installing them, pulling them out, that's the deal that we're talking about mainly. That this should be a Parks and Rec thing. Since the last 2 years, we've kind of trained their teams, and just this spring, they almost did everything. We helped a bit. So they're pretty good at doing that, and I would recommend that the city always do that part, like they take care of the lifts at CO Park. It's a technical thing, and you don't want the docks installed improperly and have a liability issue. So I'd recommend that the city keep in charge of the docks. Trail, cutting grass, that's different. So, but I would say that, in the 4 years we've been involved, that as I mentioned in the report, we're wrapping it up this year. And so if you find other, groups that like to come forward for the grass and cutting the trees and that's fine. But again, I just publicly make the note that I do believe Parks and Rec should be in charge of the dock thing, because that is a liability issue for you guys.
Well, thank you very much for those comments, and I'm sure we'll have, in the forthcoming meeting, we'll have a recommendation to probably do what you suggest, so.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks again for all your efforts.
Are you going to accept the?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we need a motion to accept the,
There was a motion,
it's in the motion?
Okay.
but also to refer back to city administration.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we have a motion and support. Is there any further discussion? And part of the motion is to accept the work that has been done this past year? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gary?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino?
Yes.
Commissioner Tuorty?
Yes.
Mayor Bospis?
Yes.
Commissioner Baker?
Yes.
Commissioner Collins?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Item 3 under communications from the local branch of the National Association of Letter Carriers, request for discounted parking permits for letter carriers.
Okay. This is, if you'd like to state your name for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Stephanie Gurno,
Okay, and is another person with you?
Catherine Conley,
Okay.
and I am a city letter carrier at the Sault Ste. Marie Post Office, as well as the National Association of Letter Carriers Union Steward for the local branch, and Catherine Connolly is the branch president. And we are here today representing the Sault Ste. Marie Post Office over an issue that we hope that we can reconcile. Roughly 25 years ago, the city came to us over customer complaints of limited parking at the post office. The city, as well as the post office, agreed that we would give up our employee parking to accommodate for more customer parking, with the agreement that we would purchase parking passes at a half-rate price and park in the designated area next to the firehouse. This has continued without issue up until last year, when Natasha Dewey, an employee of the parking enforcement, came to you exclaiming that this was unfair to hospital employees who had to pay the full rate to park in the same area. While we understand the frustration, I want to point out that we had an agreement that we would only use these parking passes to park in the designated area next to the firehouse and nowhere else in the city. There are already signs up indicating that this is for postal employee parking only, and for the past year, we have been parking across the street in the empty lot because we're frustrated that after all this time, you've gone back on your agreement. We would like to reiterate that it was the city that came to us for customer accommodation parking, and that we would only use these passes to park in the designated area to report to work. And we would also kind of like to know why this agreement has been gone back on.
Is there anything else you want to say at this point? Because this is your turn.
Yeah.
Because then we're going to talk.
We're on the same page.
Okay, thank you. So, this is not going to be a give and take, so I think we're good. We've heard your concern, okay? Unless you have something else you want to?
Nope, that's
Okay,
it.
thanks.
Thank you.
And now the city, can you just refresh our mind, it's been 25 years they've had this agreement, roughly?
Yeah, so last year, early 2018, this matter came up, and after an extensive amount of research, there was a commission action taken back in March of 1994, similar to what they had indicated in their presentation to the commission. It was for a one-year trial period, and as far as the research has indicated, it didn't appear that it was ever reviewed after that one-year trial period, and it just continued on from year to year. There were complaints raised by other surface parking individuals, and that's when the question kind of arose to administration. It was reviewed by the Parking Advisory Board and also city administration, and at that point in probably June of 2018, city administration went by the user fee schedule that was approved and adopted by the city commission, as this fee was never outlined in the user fee. And so we went based on the user fee schedule that all users of the surface parking lots, whether it be individual or employees of a business, would all pay the same price.
The parking that they gave up 25 years ago, was that next to their building?
Yes,
So it really was for people using the post office?
correct. It was for
So you're-
citizens using the post office.
Okay, so they're making room for customers to come in and use the post office where employees were parking at that time. So, does everybody understand that? So ultimately, everybody's paying the same rate on surface parking. There are no exceptions. Okay. Commissioner Baker.
Is there a copy of this agreement from '94 at all available?
There wasn't an agreement. I found in the city commission meeting minutes, just meeting minutes, and it just said that, similar to what they had indicated, there would be a certain number of permits at a reduced rate for a one-year trial period. And I couldn't find in my research any further discussion or action where it was ever looked at again.
Let's go to Commissioner Miller.
So it was a trial, one-year trial in 1994, never got reviewed again, just continued on? How did it come up in June of 2018 then? What happened that they started talking about it again?
Apparently, there were some complaints from other users of the parking lot that were paying a higher rate. They brought that to parking enforcement, and then that's where the questions started as to why the postal employees were receiving a special pricing rate for the same lot.
Thank you.
Commissioner Collins.
So what is the current rate that they're paying?
They're paying the same rate as all users based on the user fee schedule, and I believe it's $200 annually for a parking permit.
Commissioner Tuarty.
What was the Parking Advisory Board's recommendation?
To go by the user fee schedule.
And make it all even?
Correct.
Let's go to Commissioner Baker, and then we'll go to Commissioner Miller.
As far, the parking that they gave up at the post office, is that just, I guess, the post office's policy that they don't want them parking there, so this was an arrangement? Or could they technically just start parking there now? And then our citizens not, like especially our elderly, having a far ways to walk to get to the post office? You kind of get where I'm going with this? Does that make sense? To where they're giving up their parking to make it more accommodating for our citizens that maybe can't get there, so, and with this agreement, and whether it should have been reviewed a year later, but it was in place for 25 years. and
I would say
without-
they're-
Without any, just doing it without any kind of,
I would say they're really fortunate that they had it for 25 years. When you figure 25 years that they got to park for a lesser amount than everyone else in the community that was surface parking. Ultimately, yeah, it should have been revisited. It wasn't. But for folks to use it's no different than private business. If you want people to come to your building, you have to provide parking. Otherwise, they're going to park someplace else and maybe not get there. Post office is someplace where people have to get to. So they gave up the employee parking, some of it, I think, so the customers could use it. The city had some surface parking at the time. I think that party wasn't being used as much near the fire hall. It said we would try this out. I guess it was never looked at again, but ultimately, there are a lot of different groups out there that would like to have reduced parking. And if we look at one group, don't think that door's not going to start flapping with other people coming in and looking for, and if you want to have surface parking and be able to maintain the parking in the area, I think people are just going to have to pay. And it's not, I mean, it's sure, $200 is certainly enough money, but it's just the cost of doing business sometimes. Commissioner Collins?
Yeah, initially, I just wanted to make sure that the city didn't actually go back on their word. So I feel good about the fact that we actually gave them something and then we just didn't review it. So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out that I'm comfortable with and happy about. The other thing is that if we would have reviewed it back then, I probably would have voted no because of the fact of if you're going to have user fee schedules, then it has to be for everybody. You can't pick and choose who's going to get a discount. So basically, that's kind of where I am with that.
Commissioner Miller?
On the flip side of that, though, it's not their fault that we didn't review it after a year.
No.
I mean, they got that rate, they got a good rate for 24, 25 years, whatever it is, but that's not their fault. They probably just, nobody ever said anything about it, so that this is what it's gonna be. Why don't we go back to 1994 and give them one more year? Let's give them one more year, see if anybody reviews it after a year. I'd be in favor of that.
Mr. Talentino?
Just one quick item on this. I think there's some reimbursing for federal government employees in their parking situations. Read some articles. I think somebody might want to go and research that reimbursement issue. There are some other states that if the federal employees, they have to pay for the employees' parking, and they are reimbursed for those parking. So I think that needs to be looked into by some individuals.
Anything else? Is there, there's no recommendation? So we're just moving on, or are we just denying it at this point? Okay. I guess we're moving on, okay, but thank you for your concerns, but
I'd make a motion, Your Honor,
yes,
if I may.
sure.
I move that we give them that parking for the $200 for one more year, maybe even 6 months. I'll move that we give it to them for 6 months while they investigate what Commissioner Talentino said. They've been getting it for 25 years. Let's not just yank it out from under them right now.
They didn't get it last year, and it's not $200, it would be half of that, right?
Correct. It was eliminated last year.
Okay. So the $200, that's full price? $200 is their full
$200
price?
is full price.
Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you. Okay, we are into the city manager's report. Acting city manager, Troyer.
Under the city manager's report, 1 is award a bid and appropriation of funding for the construction of office space at the police department, and Police Chief John Riley will be presenting on this matter.
Evening, Chief.
We're on. As you know, a few months ago, it was decided that the parking enforcement part of the Parking Bureau would be coming under the authority jurisdiction of the police department, away from the DDA. We've been working on that very hard, the clerk's office, finance, and the police department. In order for us to properly supervise the enforcement unit, they need to be housed in the police department. Can't supervise somebody off-site like that. Problem is, we got a whole bunch of garage space at the police station. We have no office space for them. All the office space that we have is used right now. So what we looked into, what we decided to do was, there's an office currently in the east garage that the auxiliary unit uses. I went over to the DDA, took a look at all their furniture and everything. All of their stuff would fit into that office. Problem is, I need a place to put the auxiliary. They have cabinets and a bunch of equipment and radios and just all kinds of stuff that need to be housed. We're looking at a 14 by 17 foot room office that we can build in the east garage for the auxiliary. The auxiliary is completely on board with this. What we decided to do was put it out for bids. 14 by 17 foot room with electricity, heat, and air conditioning. Those are needed because of the temperature changes in that garage. It gets real hot in the summertime, gets real cold in the wintertime. And so we put it out for bids. Bid opening was 4 p.m., Friday, June 7th. Received 2 bids. One did not meet specs. It was for electrical work only. The other was from Markstrom Construction. It did meet the bid specs, including paying for a blueprint that would be submitted for approval by the city. Markstrom's bid came in at $17,586. This project was not anticipated when the budgets were started. It's relatively new, so it did not make it into the parking budget, did not make it into the police department budget. Police department does not have a budget to cover this, plus it's parking, which is separate from the police department. Whatever they do is going to be separate in their own budget. It was recommended by former city manager that we use F-351 debt service fund for this project, and that met the approval of Kristen Collins from finance. I'm looking at, we got to do a little bit of work in the old auxiliary office for IT and certain other things for parking to use that office. So Markstrom bid came in at just over $17,000. I'm going to be requesting approval for $20,000 to meet any potential overruns for the office construction, plus the work that is probably going to be needed, some work in the old auxiliary office. 2 recommendations, unless the city attorney recommends they get rolled into one. One, to approve a $20,000 budget for the construction of office space at the police department with funding from the debt service fund. And number 2, motion to award the bid to Markstrom Construction in the amount of $17,586, meeting the bid specs, and the only bidder, for the office space within the police department.
Anything further, City Manager?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, Commissioner Miller.
I just had a quick question. I saw the other bid too, the electrical bid, 4,000 something, so is that included then in Markstrom's, is the 4,000?
Markstrom's bid included the blueprints, framing, construction, heating, and air conditioning, and electrical work.
And electrical.
Everything, the whole package.
And $1,500 for an engineer's?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baker.
As far as looking for space for the parking department to move over to the police department, I understand it's better if you can monitor them within that facility. However, is there any other space we're talking, the majority of the time, I'm assuming they're out issuing tickets. They've been in the office, in that very small office with Justin Knepper in the DDA for years. So I just, before making a recommendation for a $20,000 non-budgeted, non-planned item, have we exhausted all options and all other, is there a place in City Hall where we could put them? Have we thought and try to save the 20 grand and find a conducive place, at least for maybe a little while?
We can both jump on that one if you like. I wouldn't be able to properly supervise them. It would be like our auxiliary officers going to the basement of City Hall, and then I'm held responsible for them. I have no idea what they're doing. We also have lien issues, Secretary of State information issues. Secretary of State lien considers dates of birth that is derived from your driving record as private information. That is not allowed to go to anybody outside of the police department unless they have lien authorization. The current structure of the parking unit, they do not have lien authorization. They never will under the DDA. I need to get them housed into the police department because that's where the lien information comes to, and they use that to get warrants for defaulted tickets. They type up the warrant requests and everything for the court. If they're outside the building, I can't let that information leave the building. They wouldn't get it. And again, I would not be able to properly supervise them. If they're in the building, they're in-house, they have access to the required information that they have. If they have an issue, I can work with them. If they're out of the building, I have no idea what's going on.
You still have the floor.
So, I guess, how has it been working thus far, since they haven't had, do they still have to go through a process they could still get access to that lien at some point to issue those warrants, because otherwise we haven't done that ever?
Actually, at this time, I can't comment on that. There's an investigation going on right now.
We've
and I'm
had
not allowed
some
to comment.
problems with that, if you remember. Okay? Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
I just wanted to make a comment. If we're putting all this under your supervision, $20,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money really for that. And I think financially, I think we've done pretty well in that building since we've moved in there. I don't think it's cost us a lot to even be there, has it?
No, actually, rents have been excellent.
Yeah.
Electric bills have been excellent. $20,000.
If it's better for your supervision and for everything to be under one roof, I think $20,000 isn't bad at all.
You like to make a motion, Commissioner Miller, or is that? I will. Two separate motions.
Make a motion to approve a $20,000 budget for the construction of office space with the police department with funding from the debt service fund.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuorty,
Yes.
Mayor Bospis,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
No.
Commissioner Collins,
Yes.
Commissioner Gary.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
Thank you, Your Honor. I move we award the bid to Markstrom Construction in the amount of $17,586, being the low bidder, meeting specifications for the construction of office space at the police department.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Are there any questions? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Talentino,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuorty,
Yes.
Mayor Bospis,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
No.
Commissioner Collins,
Yes.
Commissioner Gary,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item under the city manager report is report and review of options for Jason McLeod city property purchase interest. As the commission is aware, on March 18th, Mr. Jason McLeod made a presentation to the city commission to purchase 2 city-owned parcels. At that time, it's my understanding that city administration had not had the opportunity to review Mr. McLeod's request, which was outside of the standard procedure and policy. Therefore, the city commission made a motion to allow the potential purchase of the city-owned parcels, and there's 2 of them, as proposed by Mr. McLeod, and referred the matter back to the city manager. Since that time, administration has conducted a review of the request. In addition to, the city has contracted with SIDOC Group at an expense of $2,100 to perform an independent review of the request. Mr. McLeod's request is on 2 separate parcels, and the parcels are unique in nature, so administration will be presenting on them separately. The first parcel we call the triangle piece, and Community Development Director Freeman will provide a report on the administrative review as well as the SIDOC review. And then following that, City Engineer Linda Basista will provide a report on the waterfront parcel. from an administrative perspective as well as SIDOC. So I'll turn it over to Director Freeman. Considering we don't have a feed to the laptop, we'll be using the document camera to.
Hopefully it'll work.
Maybe just before you start, I can just interject a couple of things. Remembering that meeting, I think the consensus of the commission at that time, because of the, I believe Jason McLeod was here with Ken Hopper and what's the name of the group that you did?
Outhouse Consortium.
Pardon?
Outhouse Consortium.
Yeah, Outhouse Consortium, and talked about the possibilities that could exist along the river, because if we all know, a lot of waterfront in our community is owned by government entities, so that privately held waterfront is kind of near and far between type of thing, so that we get a chance to enhance public access to the river. Is something I think we were all excited about when we heard that the presentation by primarily Jason and we know the amount of kayaks that have been going and canoes in that area, and I think we only spoke positively about increasing that ability. And when Jason made his pitch to the commission, I think we all talked about, we agreed, I think at that point, the consensus was that we wanted to sell the properties, and the administration would work through the process so that we could, in fact, be able to do that. So from here, we understand the triangle piece of property that I think Nixon's are on one side, Jason is on the other side. Nixon's owned to the middle of the creek, Jason owns to the middle of the creek. So that, I mean, you now own to the middle of the creek, or at least he's asking to own to the middle of the creek. That isn't a bone of contention. I think what we really get down to is the property on the water. And Jason has already bought some property on contiguous to the property that the city has, and has already, I think, started clearing, because I see things happening there as I drive by. So with that, are we all on board? Commissioner Miller, I guess, just so we know where we're at.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments before
Sure.
Director Freeman does his presentation, and I'll listen to everything that you have to say, Mr. Freeman. Can someone read back what the motion was at that meeting, what the exact wording of that motion was? Because I just heard you say potentially, and I don't remember us saying potentially would sell it to them. I remember us voting that we would sell it to them.
So I was not at that meeting.
Yes.
The deputy city clerk was at the meeting, and the motion in the minutes is motion to allow the potential purchase of city-owned parcels, number, blah, 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 and as proposed by Jason McLeod to be referred back to the city manager. So it was, in the minutes, says potential purchase, but again, I was not at the meeting, and I've
I
not
understand.
reviewed that.
May I ask a couple of questions then? So then, the motion was to go back to city administration. At that time, was there a price, how much we were going to charge for it? No? Where did the, I'll give up my floor, but I'd like to.
You ever have it back?
I'd like to, if you don't mind.
Well, I don't actually agree with those minutes then, because what I remember is that we actually sold the property to Jason McLeod, and the only reason we were sending it back to city administration was in case we had to put any type of easements on it. So basically, because we actually had to waive the land policy, or not really waive, we needed to make sure that we were not basically violating the land policy sale, right? And we actually asked the city attorney his recommendation on that, as far as whether or not we had the ability to do what we wanted to do. So I don't know if his notes or comments are in the minutes. But how I'm looking at this is that, in my mind, there was no doubt that we sold it to Jason McLeod that night. There was a specific price that was given, it was $10,000. And the only thing that the city had to do was basically take a look at it and see if there was any easements that need to be placed on the property, and we used SIDOC as an independent third party, unbiased third party. That was the idea behind that. That's my recollection.
Okay, Commissioner Miller.
I agree with Commissioner Collins on everything except the money. I don't remember leaving here that night, us knowing how much was going.
Yeah,
I don't remember us ever talking about $10,000. And I know you weren't at the meeting, and you read back what the motion was, but I'm with Commissioner Collins. When we left that night, it was my understanding that we sold this piece of property. Somehow the $10,000 came up later that evening or whatever, but Mr. McLeod went and got the $10,000, and the city took it. I don't know why we're revisiting this at this time. We made a promise, he paid the money, it's his property. That's my comment before we have to vote on anything.
Okay, let's go to Commissioner Baker first, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, I had spoke with City Manager Turner before he left about this, and I had had some discrepancies as well, and I went back and watched the video, and his statement was right. We did offer, or agree to the sale of the property along with the easements. That's exactly what we did. We sent it back for the easements, but we were selling the property to Jason. There was no money discussed, as far as I remember, here on this table. But as far as us voting to sell it to him, that happened. It was just going to the administration for easements.
Well, I think instead
You
of
have
going to
something else?
administration for easements, I
Yeah.
think $10,000 went to administration, and somebody accepted it. As far as I said,
Yeah, okay.
we made a promise,
Yeah.
that's a handshake, that's money, it's his.
Okay, so let's hear from the city administration, and we'll go from there. Okay? Do you have something else you want to?
Well, I guess my question that I have for city administration is that it's frustrating for me being in this position when we as elected officials basically give a direction that this property is being sold and to put easements on place. That was March 1st, now we're at June 17th. Like, I'd like to have somebody explain to me how come it took so long. I mean, I read through the SIDOC information, and I know that some of the information that they received wasn't all the information they should have received in order to make the recommendation, at least along the parking. So I guess my question is that when we give you direction that the property is sold and that we sold it to Mr. McLeod and that you guys have to put easements on the property and to get this moving forward, it makes us look like we're not a city that wants to develop or to work with people. And that's very, very frustrating for me. I mean, I've dealt with it when I was in the city of Detroit, and I know that we're elected officials and we come and go, and that you guys are gonna be here a lot longer than us probably, but it's just, I guess I'd like to have somebody at some point explain to me how it took so long to get to where we are today, and Mr. McLeod still doesn't have the property.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gary?
I think I just want to explain my perspective. Jason has been very excited and forthcoming with information, and he came to us at that meeting, and he had a very good vision, and we got excited about it. And I think as a commissioner, I apologize to the administration because we forgot about the work that they have to do and the things that we tell them they have to do prior to a sale like this. I mean, we got pumped up and we said, yeah, let's do it, and we forgot about all the background work that has to be done. And if you drive by that piece of property, everything that the administration has done, I think, is verifiable. I mean, there are telephone posts there, there's sewer running under there, there's all kinds of infrastructure. So, you know, we forgot about the fact that we're gonna have to grant easements, there are gonna be conditions, there are gonna be clearances, there's gonna be other things that we have to do. So I think we, in the excitement of it, we jumped the gun and we forgot that we told the administration, and we tell the administration through our processes and regulation, what they have to do before we can sell a piece of property. So I agree 100% that we committed to Jason to sell the piece of property, and I support that 100%. But we put our administration and staff in a very bad position. And for that, I apologize. I made the motion that night, and I did have the qualifier in there, but we did refer it back to negotiate with Jason McLeod on the purchase. So I think we did 100% make a commitment to sell it, but we made the motion back to negotiate the sale. And the sale. So negotiation of the sale means what conditions are gonna be attached to that piece of land, what strings are gonna be attached, everything else, as we all know. So, and I did put the qualifier, what was the word? Potential, in that motion. So I apologize, you know, you have a job to do, and we have given you those directions, and I think that in our haste to get this done and be excited about it, we forgot about the actual process of doing the right thing and through the right process. I'm not saying it couldn't have been done faster, because I don't know what the issues are. And I do know that we've had a lot of discussions, Jason and I, and the city manager, former city manager, and Robin, about, you know, how do we get to the end? How does this work? And I think that the whole commission seems to agree that we, you know, we need to stick to the agreement. We need to figure out what is the best course of action to take tonight to get the property transferred to Mr. McLeod, and to protect the city and the easements and all the utility corridors there too, so.
I agree. So that, I think the consensus is that we sell it, we protect the city at the same time, because that's what we are supposed to do. But at the same point, he had vision, and let's try and make that vision happen. Let's go to the, I mean, we've heard from the commissioners a couple times. You have something else you want to say? Yeah, didn't you already speak once? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Gary on a number of things. I believe, though, we did go forward with the information that was presented to us and referred it back to administration as far as easement and negotiating sale price. So I think kind of we did do what we should have done. However, where I think that the problem starts, and I think this has happened in years prior, and the city attorney had mentioned with the sale of city property and how it should be listed on a city website. So then property owners that have city property next to them that is available for sale, they're aware of it immediately, right away. And so there's no issue with whether the dimensions, the square foot, the easements, all of that's done. It's put on the website for sale. The city of Sault Ste. Marie is going to be booming in the next few years with development, hopefully. And with that, in our sale of city property, I think it's really time to think about going through all of our assets, deciding what we're going to sell, whether, and I'm not saying every single little sliver, but big ones, waterfront, things like that, so we can avoid this in the future. And it's all up in front, it's all public knowledge, it's all transparent, and I think it should be something that we discuss and possibly refer back to city administration.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready for? Go ahead.
All right, we'll be quick here. We all remember where this piece of property is. It's on the west side of Riverside Drive. We got it back in 1987 on a tax reversion. Because it was a tax reversion pickup, anything in excess of what we paid for it goes back to the county treasurer to be dispersed to the other taxing entities. Back in March, based on the aerial and the information that we had, it looked like it actually spanned across the creek and had dry land on the north side and dry land on the south side. Shortly after that meeting, in keeping with the land sale policy, I notified the adjoining owners. The Nixons are here tonight to represent their interests, and at that time, I was supplied with a copy of a survey that they'd commissioned back in 2008 from SIDOC, which showed their northern property line, and this is not going to show up all that well on the camera. Their northern property line is Mission Creek, which was directly contradicting what was shown in our GIS. SIDOC acquired Northwoods in 2015, and as part of the information that we sought from them in this independent analysis, we said, which is correct? And they ended up coming to the conclusion that indeed the Nixon's property does go to the center line of Mission Creek. As a result, the configuration of the city property is more or less what's poorly drawn there in yellow, rather than the shape that we see in our GIS. So it's quite a bit smaller than we thought it was. Tina Fuller, the city assessor, placed a value of $723 on the property based on its previously understood size. However, based on a 70% reduction, I went back and did the math to see roughly how much smaller it got. That number shrinks now to about $216 90, give or take. There is a sanitary force main located immediately east of the property. You can see that's this dashed line. This line serves everything, all the housing south of Mission Creek, between Mission Creek and 3 Mile Road. As I said, the Nixons are here to represent their interests. The city commission has really two options. Sell it, if the commission wants to go that way, and it sounds like that's the way things are headed. Staff recommends that we retain ownership of the easternmost 10 feet to provide adequate room around that force main to do maintenance in the future. Less desirable would be an easement. Or, as a second option, the city commission could retain ownership. That concludes my
Commissioner
presentation.
Collins, you got a question?
Can you show me that 10 feet portion that you want to retain for easement?
I don't have it noted on the, shown on an aerial, but it'd probably be a, fairly small amount.
So is it parallel to the road then?
Yeah, it'd be parallel to the road, just in this space. Our standard parking space is 9 feet wide, so just as a comparison, a foot wider than a typical parking space.
Now, do you have easement on the rest of the property as well, or no?
We do not, because this is under Nixon's ownership. So this is one of those things where we try to get it where we can for the future. We don't have an easement north, and we don't have an easement south.
What does SIDOC recommend?
I think that their recommendation was to retain an easement or ownership, pending.
I guess a question I have is, we don't have an easement for the other property going north and south?
That's correct.
And why would we want the easement for 10 feet?
Just to set ourselves up for the future in case we ever need to do any work in that specific section.
But we don't have it for the other, running all the way along the road?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Miller?
Director Freeman, I appreciate your presentation, but when you gave us the options, here's our options, whatever, I think all of us left here that night of the meeting thinking that we've sold it. I mean, we sold it. I don't think selling it to Mr. McLeod is one of our options. I think it's been sold. And I'm going to echo Commissioner Geary's comments. If we put administration in a bad situation, we apologize very much. But when Mr. McLeod came with his money and he paid, if there was problems, you shouldn't have accepted his money. Whoever accepted his money shouldn't have accepted his money. As far as I'm concerned, the property's sold, it's his. Thank you.
Okay, I understand that. Commissioner Baker?
Now, as far as an easement goes and the city having access for any work that needs to be done, can I pose a question to Mr. McLeod real quick? As far as, is there going to be any structures or anything in that spot where the easements would be? Or is it just going to be open to where, if needed, the city could still have access to it?
You can
Does
surely
make
answer that.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you come on up here, Jason? You were going to speak to this anyway, so,
Hi, Jason McLeod.
thank you.
And I have sat with the SIDOC group for multiple reasons. One, because I have been lied to during this process a number of times. And one of the options that the SIDOC group said is that they can do it from the road, and that they didn't really see a reason to have any of these, and they questioned this entire process. The things that I've experienced, the things that I have experienced in my time in this city, and we all know some of these, and we have glossed over them. I've been harassed, name-called, prolonged my projects intentionally to bleed me of money, and we are at a point now where I will no longer work within this city. And when I show up to these meetings, I have been happy and we have had pleasant interactions. But what anybody else does not see past this point is the 2 years that it'll take for me to bring a simple project to fruition here. It will take me 2 years of obstruction, meaningless meetings, lies, backstabbing, and by the time that we get up here, I am a wreck. And it has taken its toll on me. And we're here now today, and the people that have done this to me are getting preferential treatment and so told, we're sorry, we're inconveniencing you. You? I don't even know if she's here. You.
Jason,
We are,
We asked you the question about,
yes, I'm answering it in long form because
If you
it
get
goes
to
in, this bleeds into several different pockets of problems that we have here. They said that we can park from the road and work from that bridge backwards. Everything that the SIDOC group tells me is completely contradictory to the report that was presented to the public. I have to work all these jobs that we're talking about, all these projects that I'm working on. I had to take my time today, instead of working on my projects, and produce a 7-page document showing all of my time that I have put into this beyond that meeting. All the meetings that we've had, every interaction that we've had that wound up not being truthful at all from the highest levels of our government here. You guys have all been great. You fielded all my calls. You know all of my concerns. But this is, as far as I'm concerned, a farce, and not what you guys are saying. You guys are trying to help me, and God bless you for it. I don't know what I'd be doing right now without all of you. But this is, there needs to be some accountability held here, and I'm sorry, I just can't hold it in anymore. It's been 7 years of this, and if you read through the packet that I presented you today, it's a little emotional. I'm on medication now. I'm on medication now because I have to deal with this bombardment. And if you look in every other day, there's a new thing being said. There's a new meeting having to be held for the simplest things in this town. Absolutely simple. And there's not a day that goes by that this doesn't wear on me. And we've all been aware of it for a long time, and we all smile, but if anybody wants to come in here and develop, I'm developing the worst of the worst, and it's small. I'm going after garbage property. I'm going after things that haven't been mowed in 50 years. I'm going after things that haven't been looked at in 6 decades. And I have no idea what the rest of this community is going to wind up looking like if they have to meet the plugs and horribleness that I've had to deal with over the years. I'm a bullheaded guy, and if I didn't love my projects, I would have fled this place like it was on fire. But I love my projects. I'm here because of my family still, and this is what's happening here is fraud, and there's no other way that you can cut it. There's no way of looking at our situation here and going, and you're all recognizing that it was sold. We all knew the intent. A month and a half later, it was offered to somebody else. How do you glean that this is still an open process where somebody else is going to bid on it and then say that, have the audacity to tell somebody else that I'm not following the process? The process has more than been followed. And the funny thing is, the process has been something where, from the top down, I was given direction by some of you guys and Oliver to avoid the second floor and come right to you. Where would we get that idea from? Anybody? We all know. Because the person who's going to be presenting next lives next to me now. And she doesn't want it. She doesn't want my project. And the person that works under and with her does not want my project. There's only so many times.
Jason,
Yes.
we would like to sell you the property and that you do your thing. And I don't think,
I'd like to stay in, Mayor, I have grown to respect you a lot.
Thank you.
I would like to live here.
We would like
This
you
is
to live
not-
here. Okay, so it's,
Yeah.
we're going to try and get this done, and there's a certain process that the city has to go through, type of thing, but I don't know, the offering it to someone else, I'm thinking we're talking about the homeowner on the other side. And,
Yes.
But they own the river, now you own, to the river, or you will own to the river type of thing, so it's, that's taken care of. The
Yes.
rest of it should be fine.
Well, I'll take your word for that,
Well,
but
we won't know until we vote, but I think the consensus of the commission is that we'd like you to have the property with the easements
no,
involved.
I greatly
and-
appreciate it all.
Okay.
Everything that
Okay.
you guys have done for me. But an apology to this group. I plan to be quiet tonight because I knew how it was going on. But an apology to the people that have been harassing me was too much for me to hear. And I'm sorry, I had to say something. And that's just me, that's how I operate.
Okay. I think we're good.
Right.
Let's go forward and see if we
Yes.
can,
I appreciate your time.
okay. Thank you, appreciate it. Commissioner Baker,
Okay.
oh, you got your hands over here, I'm sorry.
Two, well, one, is there going to be any kind of build on that easement to where we don't have to take that away? Were you planning on building any structure?
We don't know yet because we don't get
Okay.
answers.
And two, my next question would be to city administration, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was under the understanding that when we voted for the sale of that property, that we were waiving that bid, the bid policy to go out to other neighbors because of development. Was that not the case? And if it was the case, why were the Nixon, you see where I'm going? I'm just curious as to that. If I misunderstood that.
Commissioner Gary?
In my mind, we did not articulate that at that meeting. The motion was purely to refer it back to city administration to negotiate a sale. We didn't say we were waiving the part of the process. We didn't say anything else. I'm not defending, and my apology, Jason, was true and earnest, and I did it in front of you as well. So I hope it's not too big a shock, because I think we set them up, and I don't think we followed the correct procedure internally. That's my perspective, and
Let's go to Commissioner Torty.
I believe, didn't we ask the
City
city
attorney?
attorney that night if we could bypass the land sale policy and
Yes.
work with city administration to sell the property to Jason McLeod?
Mr. City Attorney?
My recollection is that you did ask me that question, and I might have said, it's a policy, it's not an ordinance, and therefore you can always override your policies. But administration follows your policies until you override them.
Okay, thank you. And then question number two, if nobody else along Riverside Drive has utility easement retainment, not one property owner, why do we feel like we have to, just in case? Why do we feel like we have to retain it on this specific property, just in case? You know, and so I have a little bit of a problem with that. And I know that I know we all got really excited that night. And it's just like when Denny Doherty comes here, you know, and he wants to do great development in Sault Ste. Marie. We all get really excited just even thinking about the thought of what can happen. And thank goodness people want to invest money in our city and clean it up and do great things. And so, you know, we probably did jump the gun a little bit, but I know that we all agreed that we wanted Jason McLeod to move forward with this project. And I'm not in favor of retaining the utility easement just in case, if nobody else along the strip has it. And I know that it's been very draining for Jason. I know that he's a really passionate guy, and sometimes, you know, he gets a little upset, but it's been very draining. So I'm glad that we are buttoning this up tonight, and we are moving forward.
Commissioner Gary?
so the 10-foot, is there a pipe directly under the 10-foot easement that we will have to someday maybe repair?
I believe the pipe is, assuming the accuracy of the drawings, is more or less right on the property line.
So the 10 feet is typical for equipment?
That's my
To get in
understanding.
there
I
and
would
dig it
have to
up?
defer to the city engineer on the specific technical
Okay.
aspects of it.
Is it possible that what the engineering firm said, that it's accessible from the road or from
I'm not
the
really
edge of the road,
qualified
I
to
guess?
speak on that
Okay.
matter.
Okay. Where's one of the city engineer? Come up. Commissioner Collins?
So now I'm confused. So none of the properties have an easement on the whole Riverside, but for some reason, because there's a pipe there, we think that we need to have an easement on that little piece of property right there in case we need to work on the pipe, right? Like, that little section right there is gonna allow you to work on the pipe where? On that little section, right? So that makes absolutely no sense to me.
Commissioner Baker?
That was my question. Is this said pipe, does this pipe run all along Riverside? to where,
From Gardenville and 3 Mile North to just beyond the bridge.
so it's not just in this 10-foot area that this pipe extends all the way?
Correct.
To where there's no other easements? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, you were on to speak on this issue? Okay, come on up.
I'm Jim McLeod, I'm Jason's father, and I'd like to commend the commission for honoring their word and reviewing this situation and following through on what you agreed to. I think that's terrific. I think it's a very important thing to do. The property reverted in 1987, if I believe right, 1987 or 84, for a non-payment of $50. And there were, whatever this, the utilities were there prior to it being reverted. Any restrictions that are put on this, as far as I'm concerned, should be the same as all the other properties. And including Mrs. Basista's property. There are utility easements on the other side of the road, I believe, also, and on this side of the road. With the utility easement, the public can, the city Department of Public Works or whoever is going to do any of the work there has a right to access that pipe anyway. So what Kelly's talking about is about parking. He wants to put 10 feet worth of parking on the road. That's what the purpose of the easement is for. It's not on any other piece of property. There has been a history, not just with this property, from Mr. Friedman and Mrs. Basista in attempting to obstruct Jason's projects. It's been well documented, and if you look at the dates, from what I understand, I don't have any documents in front of me, but my understanding is you directed them to proceed with your direction to sell the property. And you also listened to Mr. Canello's recommendation that this is an ordinance. I'm not sure what the differentiation is, but it's not a law, it's a policy. You can override that if you want. You chose to do that. You directed your employees or to follow through with your direction. They took it upon themselves to go beyond that. I think there's a personal animus between the two of them and Jason far beyond this property. And his frustration with this is far beyond this piece of property, but he is deeply emotionally involved with this property. He really wants to develop this and make it a nice addition to the city. That's all I've got to say is I have personally witnessed the animus that the two of these people have for Jason. And I think it's unconscionable, and I think if I had an employee that did that, I wouldn't want them to be an employee very long. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Dennis Nixon, 1916 Riverside Drive. My property borders that triangular piece at Mission Creek. I came here tonight to reaffirm my request to the city on May 3rd to purchase that triangular piece of property. Unfortunately, I didn't hear until 6 weeks after the commission meeting on the 18th that a backroom deal had been made to sell it. I didn't get notification until April 26th that the property was going up for sale. You folks had my desire on your desk, in your packets, that following meeting. Forgive me, I came here very calm. My blood started boiling a little bit hearing some of the things. I don't even know right now anymore whether I have the option to buy that or even have the opportunity to buy it. I still want to buy it, all for the right reasons. You can ask me what they are if you want. It doesn't matter now. I want to thank the city employees that at least got the boundaries straightened out. If nothing else, I got one thing out of this. Thank you.
We sold that piece of property to Mr. McLeod, no behind the back door deals. We did it right here, out in the public. It's televised, it's on YouTube. We did it on all transparency. We didn't do anything behind any scenes.
Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I believe we did everything out in the open, and this is not the first time the city has overrided the land sale policy for sale of property for development. With that said, I understand Mr. Nixon's frustration at the same time to a certain degree. And again, going back to what I iterated earlier as far as listing all of our properties for sale with the amount, proper dimensions, easements, everything on a website, and notifying neighbors that at that moment, and then it's up there forever, and then that way in 6 years, if somebody wants to come in and put it in a pizza place, the neighbor can't, you know, be upset about it because they were aware that the property was for sale and available to them that entire time. Because I understand the concern there as well. So I think with moving forward and the development that we'll have going here into the community, I really think that we should refer that back to administration to look at least maybe start with, I know we probably have a lot, but start with a small amount that's designated.
I think we should probably just go ahead and do the thing tonight, because I think we know what we'd like to have. Commissioner Gary, let's see.
Could I ask the city attorney one
Sure.
question?
Sure.
I'm assuming it's typically policy to retain some type of an easement for utility access over a piece of property. And I think that Kelly had mentioned that it was recommended that we either don't sell 10 feet of it or we retain an easement. And is there anything to do with parking here? I didn't hear that part. This is just a utility easement so that we can access the sewer if it fails.
That's correct.
I'm sorry, I kind of wrote over.
In all the sales that we've done, if we had utilities in the ground at the time of the sale, then we retain either an easement or, if practicable, we don't sell the portion that the utilities are in. And it depends on the location of the utilities, the orientation of the parcel, so on and so forth. And, but we always preserve the utilities.
Thank you. I make a motion that the city commission elect to sell the triangle parcel to Mr. McLeod, and we retain 10-foot easement. And that's it.
You're talking about the triangle portion, that's the new triangle portion, not the Nixon, which they own to the middle of the... Right. Yeah, we understand.
Correct.
Yeah. Mr. Nixon, we're not talking about your property, okay?
Right, the triangle parcel as
shown on,
newly
much
shown
smaller.
on the
Yeah,
survey.
okay. Commissioner, I'm sorry, city manager?
Is there a motion that includes a selling price for the triangle piece?
As recommended by the city administration. What was the price? It was 200 and...
200 and some dollars? 214?
$216.90.
Oh,
That's with the easement, right?
That doesn't include the easement. If the city commission so desired to reduce the price further to account for that, that is your choice.
Commissioner Gary has the floor.
I don't think it's going to affect the resale value of $216 piece of property, so I'd stand on that motion, please.
Okay, we have a motion, is there support? Is there support for the motion? Commissioner Twardy,
Can I choose to make a different motion?
does that motion fail, I guess? There's no support, okay. Yes.
I'll make a motion to sell the triangle portion of the property to Jason McLeod for the set amount without retaining the utility easement, because they can do the pipe is right on the property line.
Support.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
This is just the one parcel, correct? It's not the bottom.
Can I ask one question?
We have a question.
Is it possible to get the opinion of the city engineer to see if it is accessible
I don't know.
without the easement?
Sure. Oh, would it be accessible without the easement? Linda
Maybe
Basista.
DPW is
Yeah.
more appropriate.
Linda Basista, come on up here. What's the question? Commissioner Gary, what's the question?
If we sell it without retaining an easement, are you going to be able to access it if we have problems?
If the pipe is under the property being sold but we don't know yet because that hasn't been surveyed. No one's gone out there and put a stake where the sewer is and where it is in relation to the property. So if the sewer is on the line, there's no way to construct without entering the property. It doesn't matter whether, I caught something that Jason said as far as SIDOC group said they could access it from the road. Well, of course, the piece of equipment is going to sit on the road if there's a dig up, and it's going to sit on the road to dig the pipe. But there's always a hole on the other side of the pipe. So if the pipe is on the property line, we're absolutely digging on the property to access the pipe. So, yes, an easement is needed. We don't know whether or not the other properties have easements because it's a force main that has meanders through the property. So we can't say that somebody else doesn't have an easement when a utility is on their property. That entire discussion was without any validity as far as where that sewer is and whether or not other people along Riverside Drive have easements. We're only talking about this property, and my initial report that is in your packet said we need an easement to maintain the bridge, and mainly the bridge is what my report says. So if you grant the sale of the property without retaining an easement, you've basically put the city at jeopardy of at the will of whoever owns the property, and it's probably not going to be in 10 years, it's probably not going to be in 20, but in 50 years down the road, when our successors need to come in and either maintain the bridge, replace the bridge, or do something with the sewer, they're going to need that 10 feet, or they will be at the mercy of whoever owns that property at that time.
Thank you. Don't go too far. Commissioner Gary.
And I think keep in mind, as Linda said, 10-foot, there's no precision in where these pipes lie, and I think we've all seen construction projects that they're bouncing within those. So 10 feet is not the magic thing, and that's where the tracks lie, and then you dig. I mean, they have to look, and they have to find, and they have to use the protection. So, and I know that every piece of property in the city has an easement on it for utility, for either water, sewer, or for the wires. So I don't think it's going to detract from the value of the property. I don't think it's going to detract from Mr. McLeod's use of the property. It's a utility easement, and I think, as she said, it might be 40 years down the road before they even have to dig in there to either replace the pipe, repair the pipe, or whatever may happen. So I don't see it as a detraction to the sale, but I think it is in the city's best interest to be prudent in making sure we retain these easements so that we can go in and make repairs or replacement of these systems. And we own that property now. That's why there's no easement in there now. Correctly or incorrectly, there wasn't an easement before. I don't know that, but apparently there wasn't. But we own it, and we owe it to the taxpayers to make sure that we protect the taxpayers from having to incur future costs because we didn't do the right thing.
Commissioner Collins.
So we don't know whether there's easements on the other properties that are around that bridge?
We know what easements were obtained to construct the bridge. And at the time of the bridge construction, we also thought we owned that full triangular parcel. So during the construction of the bridge, we obtained a temporary construction easement from the Nixons for their property. But had we known we did not have the full triangular parcel, we would have gone and gotten that easement at that time. But we did use that parcel when we constructed the bridge. At least 10 feet. That's what it put in the initial report. We should retain an easement. for
And then on the other side of the
south
bridge
end.
that the Nixons own, there is no easement there right now because you would have.
I'm going to have to look into that after,
I guess what I want to make sure is that we're not doing something that isn't basically standard for everybody else in that area. So if there's no other easements on that side of the road, all the way down the stretch, even including the other side of the bridge, I don't see where us putting an easement in there, and I understand what Commissioner Gary's saying about the taxpayers and so forth, but reality is that if that was something that was pertinent, then it would have been done on all of those.
for the most part, the force main is in the right-of-way. The right-of-way meanders, this isn't a platted subdivision, this is a meets and bounds, and the right-of-way meanders along Riverside Drive. And so the force main along Riverside Drive to Gardenville is mostly in the right-of-way. And when we discover during a property transaction, whether it be a sale of property or the, say, approval of a new site plan, if we discover we have utilities, then we take advantage at that time to get easements put in place. It's only the right thing to do at the time when we have the opportunity, because some utilities throughout the city were built in the 1900s. They weren't getting easements at the time. Everybody was happy they got a utility. But in today's world, easements are always obtained when we find that we don't have them, if we don't have them. So retaining an easement is only prudent measure in this case.
Okay, Commissioner Twardy?
That being said, I would like to withdraw my motion.
Okay, let's go back to Commissioner Gary's motion. Again, you would like to state your motion?
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor.
Just so you, it's important that we have easements. No?
Trying to find the citation here. I make a motion that the city commission elect to sell a triangle parcel to Mr. McLeod, and we retain a 10-foot, the easterly 10-foot property easement for utility easement. And we sell it for the stated price of
$216.
Correct, $216.90.
The city attorney has a
I have a question because I have to type this. So, is the easement for the sewer line or is the easement for the sewer line and the bridge?
Says bridge and utility maintenance.
So the bridge and the sewer line, that's your
Bridge
motion?
and utility maintenance, yes.
Commissioner Baker?
Okay, so if we do this, and we put easements on this piece of property, all along Riverside Drive, where there are no easements on anyone's property, are we gonna go and claim? I guess it just doesn't seem,
Wherever there's a utility, there's an easement. You've heard
clearly,
this-
but
We've heard the city attorney talk about
but wouldn't there be easements on the Nixon side then, if that were the case?
if they have utilities on their side, I would think there would be.
Are there utilities on that side? And you do have an easement?
Okay, yeah, I mean, we have to, we're here to protect the public also, you know, because if they have to go on somebody's property, you're at the will of the individual, right? I mean, and I don't think Jason has a problem with an easement. So let's get the thing done.
Okay.
Okay?
Support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. He does not have a problem with that, and it's a public right, you know, and we have to be able to get in there. Any further comments? Everybody understand the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Torty,
Yes.
Mayor Bosbus.
Yes.
Commissioner Baker.
Yes.
Commissioner Collins.
Yes.
Commissioner Gary.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino.
Yes.
Motion carried. Let's move on to the next.
The next item is the
Commissioner
water.
Gary?
Oh,
Don't we have a waterfront parcel? to-
Yes.
Is there any more information to discuss, or is it?
Do you want Linda?
City manager?
City engineer Linda Bassista was going to present on the waterfront parcel if the commission desires.
We've been here for a long time, for the most part. I think we all know the parcel we're talking about. Is there an easement that's needed on that too, I believe? Okay.
I make a motion that the city commissioning elects to sell the parcel to Mr. McLeod. Then the southern portion of the parcel should be retained for the bridge, and an easement should be created for public and private utilities. And I'm not sure what the recommended price is on this one, so we need to.
The true cash value of the waterfront parcel is $9,328.
Support.
Okay. Commissioner Baker?
Has it been determined that there are utilities on the waterfront?
You can see them.
There's, okay, all right.
City manager?
A quick question, as part of that easement, it was also recommended that the cost of the legal descriptions needed to retain the portion of the easement should be borne by Mr. McLeod. Is that the commission's desire, or would they prefer that the city pay for those expenses?
Let's go to Commissioner Gary.
I would ask city attorney, I guess it all depends on how you word the purchase agreement, but typically, all of the expenses of transferring the property are borne by the seller in normal real estate transactions.
I don't think there is a normal real estate transaction. But the way this situation developed, it would have been my recommendation, if asked, that the city pay for the defining of the easements. Now, in other situations, my recommendation would be different based on the facts of that situation. But in this situation, if asked, my recommendation would be that the city bear the cost of defining the easements.
So I would ask you now then, what's your recommendation?
That the city would bear the cost of defining the easements. I don't think it's,
That'll
I don't think it's in a complex
So that'll be
issue.
addition to my motion then, that the city bear the cost of defining easements.
Okay. Jason has a question.
I'd like to state the SIDOC group, their estimation of it, they were pretty clear on it. They had came to a different determination than what we're talking about, retaining the southern piece, the sister property to it across the stream is identical to it, and there isn't utilities.
I can't hear you. You want to talk about that? Did you say?
Sure.
Is that what he said? You want to, SIDOC's estimation?
I talked to the SIDOC group about that, and there's a sister piece that's nearly identical with a house on it now that sold recently, and the piece is identical. You can still access the bridge when they do it from the road. They don't need a easement on that side to work on the bridge. So if you look at the other side of the stream, it's the same thing. So, and they own right up to the side. No easement.
We were talking about public and private utilities, weren't we? So we're talking about phone, water, sewer, and all of the other.
Those stop and then cut across the bridge from, as far as I could get from our conversation at the SIDOC group. So retaining the southern portion of it isn't necessary as far as they're concerned. And if it's in their, it's
Oh, I see.
reflected in the report too, I believe.
Okay, no, that city attorney, or city engineer.
I'd like to correct that statement. I'm not going to do my entire presentation, but because clearly you're selling this property without having had the benefit of staff review and input to tell you what the situations were associated with this parcel. But I will just address that particular statement. think what Jason was just referring to is the property that was previously owned by Cardinals to the south, on the south side of the bridge. We did indeed obtain a permanent easement for bridge maintenance that is this triangular piece. If this is Mission Creek here, this is an easement that we obtained before we constructed the bridge. It's for the construction of the bridge and maintenance of the bridge.
Where's the road on there?
Riverside Drive is here. North is this way. Say, this way too. North is this way. Here's Riverside Drive. Here's the parcel that we're talking about that's in question or that you've agreed to sell. It's right here.
We're
Okay?
not talking about that piece now, right? We're talking about a different piece?
No, but I'm pointing out that on the south side of the bridge, we did obtain an easement from then owners Cardinals, and this is I extracted this from the recorded easement that we obtained, and it's 100 foot by 35 feet by whatever this hypotenuse is. So my recommendation, and this shouldn't come as a shock to anyone, but because of that, we should have a compatible easement for the bridge on the other side. And I just want to point out that the water main is fully within the parcel that you're selling. You can't see it here because I had it on a different slide. It runs right through here. And then it wanders up and then goes into the right of way. So I'd also like to correct a statement that Jason made that we don't have easements on our property, because we don't, because the water main is not on our property. It is in the right of way, as most utilities typically are. They're usually in the right of way. If they're not in the right of way and they're on private property, then we obtain easements to construct the utilities. The water main, no utilities are on my property. They're all in the right of way. So we don't need easements on my property.
I'm just going off of the SIDOC recommendation here, and I'm going to, by the kind of the visual of that property, really not being big enough to put any kind of structure on it. And according, at least by reading the SIDOC, development of a dockage for canoe launching could be feasible without disturbing city utilities or establish shoreline protection. So if that piece of property is not big enough to develop or put any kind of structure on already, being so small as it already stands, and if all Jason intends on doing is putting in a dockage for canoe and kayak launching and a passenger drop-off zone as recommended, or as suggested in the SIDOC, without disturbing the utilities, I don't understand. I'm kind of leaning towards not having the easements on there for that piece of property.
You have that easement, otherwise you couldn't work on it if you needed to.
Right, but what SIDOC is recommending here, though, is saying that what he wants to do is feasible without disturbing the utilities.
Right. I understand that, but that doesn't mean something might not happen 20 years, 15 years, 30 years down the road that you might have to go in there. That's all they're saying.
The SIDOC group's report says that they might be able to do what they want to do without disturbing the utilities.
Yeah.
But he still says, the report still says to put the easements on over the utilities. It's just, they're just saying that,
Should be able to do it
yes,
with an easement.
correct.
Let's go to Commissioner Gary.
So you didn't seem to like the excluding the southern part. Can you point that out on the drawing, the part we're talking about excluding? The southern portion of the parcel that should be retained for the bridge?
So I had said that the riprap is right here.
Okay.
And it's all riprap. We wouldn't want any docks to be built there. If I'm understanding correctly, Jason's plan is to build kayak launching docks. And so we wouldn't want anything built in this area. Now, it's possible that he can build docks along the water, as we said, without disturbing the utilities. We will want a 30-foot utility easement. That's what we put over water main, 30 feet, a 30-foot easement. So with agreeing to sell the property, if you agree to sell it with easements, it'll be a 30-foot wide easement over the water main. We can still claim this as an easement. If you don't want to lop that off and not sell, we can just have an easement over that entire portion.
That was what I was going to ask you. If we sold the whole property, we could do like you did on the other side of the river with
That
a permanent
blue-
easement, and that would be
Right.
his
That
risk then.
blue
what he does.
represents
Okay.
the extent of the easement that we would need to protect the bridge and the water main. I don't know about the private utilities because I don't know where they are and what their requirements are as far as widths of easements. But they are in that property.
Commissioner Collins?
So with the easements that you're suggesting, he can pretty much do what he wants to do, except that it's at its own risk, meaning that if somebody has to go in there and work on the water main or whatever else, then that structure could be, whether it be a dock or whatever. I mean, I don't know what you're talking about docks, because when I drive down the road, there's docks all down there that used to be in there, right? And there's still some of them in there.
But the water main went in probably after the docks did. Water main was just constructed with the bridge. A new water main. I don't know where the old one is.
And the docks are still there.
Yeah. Yeah, I said he could have docks along there. That's not the question. The question is, do you retain the easements? And yes, you should retain easements.
But the easements won't restrict him from doing anything, right? Like, we're not gonna be saying, hey, listen, you can't put docks on there because there's an easement, or you can't put,
Well, I would submit that we don't want the riprap disturbed. We don't want permanent structures within the easement. That's typically the easement usually says no permanent structures. He could put a kayak rack that sits there, but putting permanent structures but that can be written into the language, that if he puts any permanent,
yeah, when you
it's
say
gotta come
permanent-
out.
When you say permanent, I'm thinking a permanent dock, and you're saying nothing permanent, so the dock can't be there.
within the easement.
Well, but if it attaches to the easement, right, dock's gotta attach to something.
Right, but the easement isn't proposed, that blue represents, if you show the document.
I guess the question would be, though, if they wanted to make something on that easement, they would be doing it at their own risk, that they might have to move it someday if work
Yep.
needed to be done. So you could do it, but you'd
And
have to remove it.
Usually, as I
Yeah.
said, usually water mains break at the most inopportune time, which is in the winter. Jim's guys will go in and start digging. I would just like to explain that my reason for recommending not selling the property is because with a 70% coverage area of easements, you wouldn't normally sell the property because of the burden it puts on the taxpayers in protecting that. But it is your prerogative to sell it with 70% or more easements placed over the property.
Commissioner Baker?
Just out of curiosity for clarification of a permanent structure versus non-permanent. So would a kayak dock launch pad like they have over at Voyager, which you take out in the winter, but you put back up in the summer, would that be considered a permanent structure or?
Well, what they take out is not permanent. It's a floating dock. But what they attach it to on the land side is a permanent structure.
And on average, any idea how big that kind of a structure is? Like how?
I can't talk
I'm
to
just
his
trying to-
plan or what he's trying to do because I don't have that information. That wasn't presented to you. It wasn't presented to us. So I cannot speak to his specific plans, and he said here tonight, I don't know because I don't have the plans yet. So talking specifics about what he wants to do and whether or not it would impede our ability to maintain the utilities is unknown at this point in time.
I guess,
Commissioner Gary?
could I ask Mr. McLeod a question?
Sure.
Would that be? So you understand the risks of building anything there with an easement or in this situation?
Yeah. Come up here.
So the original motion had carved off that southern portion of the parcel. Is that agreeable to you, or were you thinking that you would buy it, except there will be a large
I'm
easement
perfectly
on it
oh.
that will be?
I'm perfectly fine with easements. That makes sense, and that's absolutely fine by me. If there's going to be a 70% reduction in the usability of the land, as far as I'm concerned, there should be a 70% reduction in the price. And not only that, when you place an easement to build anywhere around it, you have to go back a certain footage from that easement, or else I'm going to be in here having to negotiate with someone who has told me no 100% of everything that I've ever asked for that you've always thanked me for and said that I was doing a great job for. I'm not looking to do that. But if there's going to be a 70% drop off of the usability of the land, and one of the things is, the reason I don't have a plan is because it's been in the second floor office since the beginning of March. And I can't make a plan until I hear something like we had tonight. And it's an oddity to me that I think that we're discovering these things tonight in June, the middle of June, when it's been sitting on a desk since the beginning of March. And I can't make a plan until I start understanding the basis of what I'm going to be allowed to do and not allowed to do by the DEQ, by the DNR, who I've been in contact with. The only thing that I haven't gotten is an answer from the second floor, which is, I'm sorry to say, historically, it's always been that way. And so how am I to make a plan when I'm hearing about it 3 months after the fact? I can't make a plan. I have ideas, but until I get stuff and it's been stonewalled and pushed out, and here we are to the point where I need answers, and I've got some now and I can work with this. All right, I'm perfectly fine. When you asked me about the 10-foot easement, I was expecting the 10-foot easement. Now, as far as correcting me on the other side of the lake, the GIS map doesn't show that there's another easement on the other side that I can see. But I'm perfectly fine if you guys need to work on utilities, because it's my neighborhood too. I want a bridge. You know, if there's a bridge over the property that is servicing my home, I'd like to have that happen. And if there's a gas leak and I'm not home, I'd hope somebody would be there to dig it up. But we can't have these conversations, and frankly, I'm a little bit appalled that it has to happen in mid-June here on television. And I think you guys should be too, because this has been something that we've been struggling to get to this point.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gary?
I'd like to amend my motion to include the southern portion of the parcel, but also include a permanent easement, which is typical of the other side as well. And I also would like the purchase price to, I think the assessor should look at the valuation with all of the easements on that property. I think we should have an independent review to see if that's the true cash value of the property, because I do agree that with 70% easement coverage and you know, less utility, that that may not be the fair reflection of the price. So I would like that reviewed.
Support.
Just moved and supported. Does everybody understand the motion? Commissioner Collins? Purchase price, Brian.
Purchase price. How much time are we going to allow the assessor to determine what the purchase price should be?
City manager?
I understand that, but I want to
Yeah.
make sure that it
Yeah.
doesn't sit on
Yeah.
somebody's desk for 30 days.
Good point.
The true cash value of the waterfront parcel came from the city assessor at $9,328. that is the true cash value for that parcel.
So if 70% of it's not used, then 30% is the value of that, so roughly 3,000 and change.
So how long,
Anyways, but
how
however
long,
you want to figure it out.
he's just asking how long it might take to figure it out. Shouldn't be long, right?
Right there.
Okay.
I mean, that's what the true cash value is. If we determine that the easements are 70% of the land coverage, we'll reduce the value by that, and that will be the purchase price.
Put that number right in the motion.
So we already have the number, is what she's saying. We already have the true cash value, and then if you're going to reduce it by, gotcha.
Does somebody have that number offhand, or are you just gonna make
If you want to give me a calculator.
part of it?
Well, I would need to confirm with the easement coverage of the land, if the city assessor or the city engineer would confirm that the easements over the waterfront parcel is 70%, or if that was just a guesstimate.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah, I think we need confirmation, a review of that.
Okay.
So then
Get
my
the right
initial
number.
question is
How long?
how long?
Are we talking by the end of the week, or are we talking by,
We'll have it by the end of the week.
okay.
Okay, and will that come back to the commission, or will
No.
that just basically the price is the price, and then we're good?
Being the city
Do we need to
manager.
authorize this
Yeah.
interim city manager to
Yes.
finalize that price then? That'll be part of my motion.
Okay, everybody understand the
And
motion?
the end of the week should be part of your motion as well, right?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry, the end of the week should be part of the motion as well, then.
Yep. Commissioner Talentino?
Amendment number 6.
Thank you. I haven't said anything on this, so I figure I better pipe up now while I got a chance. I sit here and I find it amazing how long it takes and how much is involved in two little slivers of property when we just give the Sioux tribe acreage and acreage over one thing and we never see it again. I realize there's a lot of work involved in this. I fully understand that at an administration level. But yes, as a commissioner, I get excited when somebody wants to take a piece of property that there's nothing on it and it looks like garbage and do something with it. Everybody knows, it's no secret what I do in this town every Friday. I'm on site to be almost 200 complaints of blight, from houses to siding to cars to household waste this year. I'll be on 200 cases. And I see a piece of property like this and somebody wants to do something with it, I get excited about that. Because I'm looking at every Friday at garbage and stuff that needs to get cleaned up within this city. So when a young person, and I'm gonna call him an investor, like Mr. McLeod, comes to us and wants to do something, I get excited, because all I've seen to this point within inside our city is low-income subsidized housing units that wanna come to the city. If no big investors have stepped up, and we haven't seen them yet, I like this situation right here. I like it, okay? So let's start with the little people. Big ones are gonna get here. They're gonna come. So that's all I gotta say on that.
Commissioner Miller?
I don't think the big ones are gonna come if we're giving the little guys this kind of problem. This is why we have a reputation of not being easy to work with, and this is why nobody wants to come and build anything here.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Everybody understand the motion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Bospas,
Yes.
Commissioner Baker,
Yes.
Commissioner Collins,
Yes.
Commissioner Gary,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Talentino,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuorty.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. Okay. Thanks again for your understanding, and we know it's a lot of work on both ends. Okay. Any status reports?
Nothing further on my end, Your Honor.
Okay, we're in matters presented, item I, matters presented by the public. Is there anyone in the audience like to make a comment at this time? Okay, item J, matters presented by the commission. Commissioner Miller.
I just wanted to make a comment about something that happened this morning. In front of one of the gift shops on Portage Avenue, there's been a huge hole there where an electrical panel's supposed to be. It disintegrated over the winter, and we had a cone there for a while. I contacted interim city manager this morning, and she contacted Jim Morrow, and he was right on it. I just wanted to say thank you. Sometimes the wheels of government move pretty slow, but today, a couple of phone calls, and everybody was right on it. So, Jim, thank you to you and your staff, and thank you. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, are we going to meet before the, yes, we're meeting on the 1st of July. Commissioner Baker.
I just have a few comments. One, I want to applaud Dana Sanderson, Lindsay Ellis, and the DDA, and all the Main Street volunteers for a great event with the Rocks the Locks. I ran/walked/crawled through it. And I know a lot of other commissioners were there volunteering as well. So appreciate all the community to come out for a great event like that, and I expect it to get bigger and bigger every year. With that, the Sioux Pride Committee is having an event this Saturday up at Sherman Park. It's family-friendly. There's going to be bouncy houses, free lunch. It starts at noon. Boys and Girls Club will be up there having activities for youth, and as well as a lot of resources and mental health establishments setting up booths so people can get, I guess, educated on what we have available in our community for help if needed. So I encourage everybody out in the community to come support this, the Sioux Pride Committee. They've been working very hard within our community to have a inclusive relationship with everyone. So I hope to see everybody out there in support of these guys because they've been working really hard. And it also helps out the Boys and Girls Club. So it's a win-win for a fun day at one of our great parks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Gary.
I make a motion, we adjourn this meeting.
Support.
Been moved, support. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.